Hello, Bob Reedfeld here, preaching and teaching minister of the Spring Hill Christian Church of rural Oak, Lockney, Georgia. And welcome to another lesson on the Doctrine of God. We just finished up last week the section about God as creator. And today what we're going to be starting is the second section of our study that will involve several lessons about God as the ruler. And so in this first part, we're going to look at some alternatives to providence. What is at stake in the question of providence? It's the question of how we explain what happens in the ongoing world. Its scope is universal. It includes nearly everything that happens after creation in both nature and history. Certain specific redemptive works are usually set apart into a category of their own. From the biblical perspective, providence deals with the way God has been related to the ongoing world ever since the moment of creation. In analyzing the biblical view of providence, as well as non-biblical alternatives, there are three main variables that are potentially responsible for the events of nature and history. The first one, God, which is variously defined, free will creatures, including both angels and men, and impersonal or natural law. And a summary of how those factors are utilized in the alternatives to providence. Indeterminism has the law, and man and God as equivalent. Self-determinism has man as law and God, and determinism has both materialistic and theistic sections, law and God, man, the law, and God is man. In indeterminism, according to this view, all things happen by fortune or chance or coincidence or just random occurrence. Natural law, while preventing absolute chance, allows for random variations at many points. Chance has been defined in the following ways: absence of cause, ignorance of cause, intersection of two or more independent causal sequences, which is a valid definition. Random effects derivable from the same cause, which is also a valid definition. Some of the examples of indeterminism is the philosopher Epicurus, evolutionism, at least in some of its forms. Some of the implications of indeterminism: chance, happens, coincidence. Free will is preserved, but it is trivialized, especially death. Ethical responsibility for good and bad choices is preserved, but there's no basis for labeling anything as good or bad in indeterminism. Also, purpose or meaning is excluded for the universe as a whole and for individuals within it. And the value of individual human life is lost in indeterminism. Self-determinism, this is the idea that autonomous man is free to determine his own future and ultimately that of the world. Man's control is not absolute, of course, but is much greater than the posited by indeterminism. This is usually held in combination with indeterminism, the latter dominating until man evolves to the point where he can begin to direct his own evolution. Examples of self-determinism are humanism, occultism, and deism. Implications of self-determinism: nature is a closed system and God is excluded. Man alone is responsible for the future, and man is viewed very optimistically as to what he is able and willing to do. The third thing, determinism, this is the view that everything happens necessarily happens the way it does. It could not have been any other way. This is universal causalism. In other words, everything that happens is ultimately caused by a single force. This view is commonly referred to as fate or destiny. Whatever will be, will be. Types of determinism, and few of these are purely deterministic in the absolute sense. Naturalistic or materialistic determinism, natural, impersonal forces determine all things. For example, fate, astrology, mechanism, Marxism, psychological determinism, for example, behaviorism, as represented by B.F. Skinner. There's pantheistic determinism, the God who is equivalent to the world causes all things. Stoicism, karma, Spinozism, a Greek philosopher. There's theistic determinism. The personal God determines all things. Leibniz espouses this view. Islam teaches this. And Christian absolute foreordination. Examples like Martin Luther, Zwingli, John Calvin, Gordon Clark all adhere to that. Most of those who hold this view object to being labeled as determinists, actually. Some of the implications of determinism for man, free will is eliminated. Since this is a necessary effect of this view, those who hold to it tend to either redefine free will or to soften their determinism. It fosters a sense of resignation or quietism. Man is robbed of his dignity. Even criminals cannot be blamed or held responsible for their crimes. The implications of determinism for evil. God himself must be responsible for evil. Many determinists try to avoid this conclusion by interjecting the ambiguous concepts such as divine permission and second causes. The implications of determinism for morality. Without free will, there is no moral responsibility. Good and evil become indistinguishable. This leads to the philosophy of whatever is good. And so that's our section beginning on the alternatives to providence in God the ruler. Next week, we're going to talk about general providence. We'll give a general definition, and we'll be getting into that in a little bit more detail. So I hope you have a great rest of the day, and may God bless you.